right, so welcome to BSing with Sean K. I'm your host, Sean Kneese. Today my guest is stand-up comedian Steve Hughes. He's joining me from Australia over Skype, so thanks a lot for coming on.
No worries, man. Good to meet.
And so how did you first become involved in stand-up comedy, and what was its initial appeal to you?
Well, I played in bands for years and years and years in the 80s and the 90s. And then I don't know, I was always funny. I think all comedians that sometimes just realise that they're funny, they make their mates laugh and so forth. And then in hindsight, really, after I started comedy, I realised we were all quite into it. Even in the 80s, we'd always watch, Richard Pryor and Eddie Murphy and Steve Martin and listen to Bill Cosby records. I can even remember one day listening to Exodus Bonded by Blood and then straight after listening to Bill Cosby. So as I was just in bands and they became kind of you put a lot of work in, and it's Australia, so, it was really isolated and you'd work hard and nothing really happened. The irony being my first band, Slaughterlord, was probably the one that got the most, is probably still the best known, really, even though it only did one demo. But and then I just decided, right, bands kept falling apart. So I just went, well, maybe I can try and do something artistic that doesn't require me having to have other band members.
So would you say there's any similarities between the playing metal and performing stand-up? Or?
Well, I mean, comedy and music have an alliance in timing, obviously, and flow, but really I'm starting to miss music in a way. Comedy is very cerebral and transient compared to music, which sort of, I think, is a bit more emotional and stays with people. But I remember the first comedy gig I did, I came off stage thinking, geez, there's not much release in that compared to drumming. And I kept going, and now I'm just in another strange transitional space.
And what could you say about your early experiences performing stand-up, and what were the experiences, your early gigs?
Well, I always used to say the first gig you ever do, it's so frightening. It's not like music where you have to, you rehearse and you learn to play your instrument, and then you got a bunch of guys who are your mates, and then you put a band together and you play on stage. Comedy, you just have to start. You don't know whether you're any good. You don't know what to do. There's no one else with you. There's no music to hide behind. But I always used to say this thing, well, the spirits of comedy somehow let your first show be all right. Just because you've had the guts to do it, and then about your second or third one, they give you complete death, so that you realise that you've got work to do and what it feels like to stand in front of a crowd where no one laughs, and how you're going to get out of that.
And how would you say your life as a stand-up comedian now compares to when you first started? In what ways do you feel you've improved?
Well, obviously I left here about 15 years ago. I went to the UK because I knew that there was just art in Australia. It was just sort of, it just doesn't rate. It's a very commercial, conservative country, and it's just not enough work and not enough people, and the country's too big, and it's very indoctrinated into a mindset. It's waking up to a degree like the rest of the planet of stuff. But so I went to the UK, and then I just kept getting more work, and then of course, with that kind of practice, and then I just get to go overseas and do Europe, and so you get invited to different festivals, then Canada, and you go to the Middle East, and then you do Asia, and so you just get better, and you get better at knowing how to stand in front of different people from different countries, and just like anything, you just practice, and you've got intention. It just sort of it gets better. So it just evolves. It just keeps evolving,
And how would you describe your style of comedy?
Well, I used to say it's like social commentary with killer jokes, and sort of people think I'm funny, but they know I'm not joking. In that sense.
And what could you say about like comedy's role as far as like getting people to like question the world around them, or like comedy that kind of like is a comment, like it reflects the times and stuff like that?
Not so much a social commentator per se, perhaps on a sort of more surreal level, as I say, but then some comedy's just basic comedy about stuff in everyday life, which is usually what the mainstream, as I call them. I guess, I used to think going from comedy world, from music world, I was now entering the mainstream, but then I realised, no, there's a super mainstream. There's the mainstream that don't go anywhere they're not told. And so, and of course, I find that, lots of comedy, anyone that comes from their heart about their life, I find I put in the same category. It's you got your Lenny Bruces and your Bill Hicks and your George Carlins and your Doug Stanhopes and sort of social commentary. But I also think Richard Pryor was social commentary in a way, even Billy Connolly, because it's honest. Not so much social commentary, but self-commentary, which is. And I like a comedian who sort of, after he's been off stage, you kind of know a bit about who the person is, per se, or at least you have an idea. Where some comedians just tell jokes and you really don't know who the guy is by the time your show's finished. But I think it's relevant in a way of getting ideas out there to people, because as Oscar Wilde said, if you're going to tell people the truth, you better make it funny, otherwise they'll kill you. So it kind of works on that level, I think.
And so would you say like comedy now is declining, or what's your view of like the comedy scene today?
Well, I've been, depending on what country you're in, I suppose it's like in Great Britain, for example, it certainly hit a high where it became very popular to the mainstream. So now I think you're getting more of the industry involved in getting guys. It's like any art form. It's very frustrating. You've been doing it 15, 20 years and you know how good you are at it, and then these other guys just get more exposure because they're safer and easier to market. So I think we're in that environment at the moment. There's a kind of, we can market comedians, so, but you can't particularly market them, so much to the super mainstream if you're me or Doug Stanhope or... And the irony being, of course, is that's kind of the audience you really want if you've got something to say. Otherwise, you're preaching converted a lot of the time, so it's a catch-22 situation. But in this previous transition I'm going through, which is far more personal at the moment due to our circumstances, I'm starting to realise that you really got to do a lot of work on yourself. I sort of stopped doing a lot of inner work on myself really over the years, and got involved in the world, and I'm starting to realise we can't just yell at the system anymore. You can't just scream at a system because we're all upset about it, because we're just a lot of times we're projecting our own unresolved stuff onto a system which ironically we can't change anyway, so we can really only change ourselves and get out of that system really by self-investigation. So that's kind of where I'm at the moment, knowing that there's a big transformation going on in my life, and which is questioning even what I've been doing, sort of some of the hypocrisies of what I've been doing. As much as I've been out there ranting and thinking and carrying on, and people say I'm just good what I'm saying, there was a part of me that was just projecting my own suppressed view of the world. And I can't, my intuition was telling me, you can't just keep yelling at the world. You can't keep yelling at the world. You've got to stop and take stock of your internalized stuff. And I was kind of just pushing it. I kept pushing it and going, I'll finish at the end of this year. I'll finish at the end of this year and do some rest and do some introspection. Unfortunately, I didn't quite make it. I was going to finish at the end of 12/13, but I just wore myself out from constant touring, and my body decided to make me fucking stop. My spirit, it said, fucking, we gave you... It gave me clues, it gave me intuitions, it gave me omens, and I fucking ignored them, and to my detriment.
So, what have been some of your favorite experiences performing stand-up, and what have been some of like your favorite places to perform?
Well, if people are enjoying it and laughing, then that's a favourite place at the time. So, I've done so many countries now. It's quite unfathomable why I didn't take a rest. I've done gigs in Croatia and Estonia and Slovenia and Finland and Norway and Sweden and all across Britain and the Middle East and parts of America, Canada. I've never done the United States. Spain and Switzerland but if they get it, they get it. I always figured if you can make people laugh, then you're a comedian, not just particularly your own type of comedian. I mean, that's where some comedy, if you're just going to discuss local things that happen in your culture or your city or your environment, then of course it may be harder for you to make people laugh in another country. But I think if you're a comedy that's sort of either about world affairs or stuff that's just simply human, which all people sort of resonate with, then basically that makes you that's the kind of comedian I'd want to be anyway, as an artist, where you can, like music is the language which goes beyond language. So you can make music which crosses any kind of language barrier or cultural border. So I think comedy should be able to do the same if you are genuinely funny and resonating with something that's deeply human. But so favourite places, really, it's just sort of, if they're enjoying it, then that's a favourite place. It's good when they do it. It was always a breakthrough to make the Dutch laugh. Eventually, that was.
Yeah, and you had that was part of your routine, the Dutch, right?
Yeah, they were the first ones I did in mainland Europe, and that's when I wasn't as experienced a comedian, and they didn't have as much comedy in their country back in the sort of early 2000s, and yeah, so that was a trial by fire.
And so what can you say about like the process for writing comedy and trying out your material in clubs, like for the first time?
Well, I used to notice that when guys are sort of starting out, some guys are just pretty much funny straight away. There's always those people who like anything. Like, I was in a band with a guy who learned guitar in about 8 months. There's always, you get these people that just sort of take to things. Personally, some of the ideas that I had about making comedy I learned from lyricists, from songwriters who wrote lyrics like Sting and stuff, which is kind of cut back on as many words as you can, really, to make the point. I notice a lot of young guys, when they want to describe something, they try to make it very colourful and sort of really heightened to the imagination of the audience. So they'll try and create this graphic, colourful scenario to make the joke have more impact, when really it does the complete opposite, because they start to use words they wouldn't really speak in normal day life. They start to paint the picture for the audience, which is not your job. Your job is to have as minimal words as possible so the audience gets the point, then paints the picture for themselves, and then laughs their guts out. So I think that's one approach I got, was like get a lot of your words out of the way and use clarity with minimalist words as much as possible, so that way the audience can paint their own picture, and you don't rant on. You know what I mean? If you want to make a big point, you don't want to rant. You want to give it clarity. You want to give it clarity and succinctness, really, and a killer punchline, of course.
And so, do you get surprised by what jokes go over well and which ones don't?
Well, sometimes you write a joke which you think is really good and then no one ever laughs at it. That's quite disappointing. You think, strange, I treat my jokes sometimes like Tori Amos used to treat her songs like children. And I've had some jokes which still work, which are some of the first jokes I ever wrote. And then I remember this joke I had, but it's kind of it worked for so many years, and then it kind of got tired. It was almost like the joke got tired, like we need a rest. And so I stopped using it for a few years, and then it said, okay, I'm rested now. I should have taken that as a heat, actually, and taken a rest myself.
So what have been some places you haven't performed yet that you hope to perform in the future?
Well, of course, I haven't done the United States. It's so big. It'd be good to get invited there, although currently the United States is turning into quite a frightening place to even want to go to. it's. I'm well versed. I do sometimes wonder what are they going to do in the United States. Are they going to collapse it? Which seems to be and I don't mean from an outside source. I mean from an inside. And it would be good to go to the States. I haven't done anywhere in South America. I've done a lot of Europe, Middle East, in the sense of Dubai and Bahrain and Doha and stuff, not Middle East, not proper Middle East, but those places are more like Western petrol stations. But I've done Hong Kong and Thailand and Singapore and Malaysia, and so where I go in the future. At the moment, I can't even think about performing comedy in the future yet. I'm actually thinking about going to the desert. I think I've got a lot of work to do before I can do comedy. I've been doing some comedy actually here in Australia the last few weeks, just at a thing called the Freedom Summit, which is a more of dialogue. The guys who run it sort of found me through a friend of mine, and because my comedy is kind of social commentary in a way, they got me on this thing. But really, it's with guys who are talking about alternative law and sustainable living and nutrition and metaphysics, and so it's quite interesting being in that kind of environment. I think I've immersed myself in the entertainment world for so long, it kind of got the better of me, and smashed me against the wall through my own lack of introspection, I guess. So now I guess it's a time of, as I said, it gave me omens. My friend who's a shaman and astrologer, who I've met only recently by great synchronicity, and I told him I had a lot of omens, that I had to go inward and slow down. And as he says, he goes, "You're a 5-planet Scorpio and you ignored omens." He goes, "Are you a fucking idiot?" It would seem so, yes. Well, being offended is an interesting one, isn't it? I mean, at the moment, we could look at being offended on many different levels. The way I think they brought political correctness down, I really do, as I used to say, is it is like a sort of form of intellectual colonialism or sort of psychological fascism, I think, where they're bringing this apparent protectionism into your subjective world space. So now, with the environment, the irony being the world is getting so out of control, there's starting more wars, there's more pollution, there's more this, there's more chaos, there's more upheaval. Even from a metaphysical sense, the world is finally getting sick of us, I think, on that level. And yet, the irony being that in the West, at least, we're creating these over-protectionized environments. Sort of everything safety and health and protection, and yet, but it's really just oppression, really. Telling you what you can be offended by is taking along the role of, well, it's someone's master over your inner domain. Who could possibly deem a structure of what's offensive to you or me as different individuals coming from different backgrounds or different cultures or families or morals or religious beliefs. And then it's a great trick. As a friend, a girl I was speaking to a few weeks ago, she said, well, she kind of thought political correctness was a good thing. And I said, in what way? And she goes, because it gives a kind of protectionism to, say, a minority, where say, there's a minority in a culture, be them immigrants or something, and that political correctness then gives, the big bad white man or the big bad oppressor a kind of structural framework to not be as offensive to, say, a minority. So they get a kind of protectionism. But this is a complete load of bullshit. You don't know what's offending these people to begin with. Where does anybody get that? I don't understand who worked this out. Secondly, it's another form of psyops, isn't it, where it's really saying that the minority has no power, so they need to be protected. And the idea of protecting a minority seems like a noble idea, but it's actually the cessation of power from the minority and the majority in one single go. you take away the majority's power of simply being themselves and maybe perhaps just getting on with this minority through their own evolution, and you take away the power from the minority by saying that they need protection. I think it's the same thing when the West likes to put up posters about, we've got to be so kind and go and feed Africa, which is another form of subconscious conditioning towards that apparently Africans are so hopeless they can't do it themselves. And, of course, you've put them in an environment where you've taken a lot of their resources and oppressed their lands and oppressed their people, and then you go, now we've got to protect them. It's like as if, what did they do for food before you turned up? They were here for thousands of years. All humans know how to feed themselves. And the irony being that they did it without destroying the earth. So, and this is not a bash against white man either, as if he's the big bad baddie of the entire planet either, because that's another form of, there's a big oppression against white men as if he's the only guy that's ever committed chaos, although he certainly sits on the throne a lot of the times. I understand. he certainly likes to sit on the throne and spout his mouth off a lot, but, we've got to be careful there that we don't fall into a sort of form of, and I've been victim to it myself growing up in Australia, which is very oppressive to Aboriginals. You've got to be careful. You've got to juggle your own, because you start to realise you get a sense of deep subconscious guilt and self-loathing about the actions of others, which may be relevant to take on board in the sense of self-healing, because I think all oppressors, all colonizers have a form of subconscious guilt because they know they know what they did. They know what they did. In fact, I was listening to this African guy the other day. He put it very wonderfully. He said, he was in America actually, and he's seeing gated communities and signs that say no trespassing and keep off this and stay away from that. And a friend of his asked, what do you think of all this kind of stuff? And he said, well, I'll tell you, he goes, whenever anyone oppresses another culture and takes what is inherently not theirs, steals from other people, takes away their dignity and their cultures, on a subconscious level, he suffers guilt. And then that subconscious guilt forms into the psyche of the entire culture. And therefore, because that guilt is unexpressed, the psyche begins to manifest the very things so that kind of thing doesn't happen to it. Because so next minute after you've oppressed somebody, you start putting up signs going, keep away, right, because you don't want what you just did happen to you. And a lot of this will be subconscious, unconscious stuff. But that's the powerhouse that manifests a lot of sort of physical reality, isn't it? So, which is what I used to invest my time in investigating, and then somehow got caught up in the world and my own ego, and now I'm back here having to go internal again, which is the only really the only way to go, really, because we can't stop this system, can we? We can't stop that. We can have as many. I mean, who knows? But I kind of get there is a lot of inner work I think that's got to happen.
So you're talking about like a change yourself so you can change the world kind of thing.
Well, yeah, I think it seems quite. You don't get caught up in the New Age because the New Age is a bit of a trick. I think a lot of the beginnings into sort of self-introspection from the West at least come into sort of New Age, through New Age doors or so forth, because they're there and they're a sort of alternative to church. And but a lot of their stuff is also just think positively. Everything's happening for a reason, and you can't just think positively, because the darkness exists, and indigenous people will tell you this, and the Asians will tell you this with their yin and yang symbol, which shows you the dark and the light. And the dark has to be integrated; it can't just be thought away, because that's a disassociation from a whole. So that's more fragmentation. In fact, the New Age with this just think positively could be almost seen as another form of divide and conquer. It's more separation. we live in separation in the West. The separation of ourselves and the earth has been a major part of the destruction. And I think even a friend of mine who I've just recently met said a great thing the other day. She goes, even when you go to see, Western medicine is becoming obsolete for me. It's just becoming obsolete. It's if you want to fix a bone, then maybe it's all right. But the whole thing in Western medicine really comes from war, how to fix holes in people and chaos and stuff. I mean, they even say it, don't you? You've got to battle cancer and crusade against heart disease, and it's just, even the words are still mixed with war. Whereas a lot of Eastern medicines or indigenous medicine is holistic. Because my friend's thought up the other day. She goes, you always have specialists and a heart specialist and a kidney specialist and a liver specialist, blood specialist. But if they're just specialists, then you separated yourself from the whole of the body again, haven't you? So the kidney guy doesn't know what's going on with the heart guy and the liver guy, and yet the holistic medicine goes, well, everything's affecting everything. So to be an expert on just one part of it is another form of divine conquer. It's another form of separate. Kidney might be out, maybe have something to do with another part of your body. And the kidney out is probably, okay, well, I just was saying there's a lot of separation, I think, from ourselves and our bodies and our minds and our spirits and the planet itself. And we're not going to get over this by just waking up every morning and doing affirmations going, I feel great, I feel great, I feel great. It's not in shaman soon.
I mean, if you aren't aware of, like, what's wrong in the world and what's going on, you're just looking away from it. Like, how does that help? That doesn't help anything,
No. It's the, and I guess where I fell down is I began to fall into judgment, really. I think a lot of us, well, I don't know, I realized that I just got more and more invested into the negativity of the world, and actually, and sort of it, that's the problem. If you learn, you need balance, and my intuition was whispering to me, I need balance, and because if you start to invest all your time into the problems of the world, then it's in such a state that overriding negativity can begin to sort of, affect your psyche and your body. It's like Alan Jones, that guy in the States. Is that his name? The guy that screams and carries on.
Oh, Alex Jones?
Alex Jones. I mean, see, that guy's just, he makes out like he's telling her everything that you need to watch out for, but he's continually based in anger.
Yeah, and then he mixes a lot of like lies too, and like he just kind of throws things out there too. And then he's like, you can save. This is how you can. He goes, if you want to fight the globalists, you got to buy my book, buy my this, buy my
that. I mean, I fell for a bit when I kind of just the beginning of it, just kind of shit. Jesus Christ, something in me resonated about this guy's a bit over the top. I used to give him the leeway that perhaps just because he was from Texas, that's what made him like that. But now I started to come to the understanding that, no, I think he's probably more just, my friend calls it fear porn. I don't know, but it's, you start to become more savvy about, whether this person seems to be sort of giving out good information, but, even his site is called Prison Planet, which ultimately doesn't give you it's almost like you see, that's what I realized. You start looking at this stuff like this all the time, and that stuff starts to infect your subconscious, you know what I mean? Until next minute you really don't ponder solutions. And of course, that's the point of it, I guess, because, when you dole out that much negative information, for want of a better word, but that much sort of cataclysmic information, you almost make people impotent because they see themselves as powerless. So you could, as much as he may be telling the truth about big stuff that's going on in the sense of its evilness, you can then it can be another divide and conquer strategy, because you make people impotent because they feel powerless under the weight of such disaster.
And you've talked about like I think that was kind of the point you were making about like the war on terror and like some of your things, like making people just afraid. So we got to fight this war on terror. Like you.
Well, I mean, some of these things you don't even need to have to go in the conspiracy theory world or alternative history or alternative media or any kind of world, I don't think. If you have really half a brain and common sense and you're not fully indoctrinated somehow and basing your life around total conformity or who just could possibly believe that anything like this, like a country like the United States that spends more money on defense than every country on earth could possibly feel threatened. A country that's got like a fucking 1,500 military bases on all planets or countries on the planet, full spectrum dominance, could then possibly stand up and go, we're scared of them.
Yeah.
yeah. Like, it doesn't even make sense logistically or rationally. It's like the guy who knows who's a 10-dan black belt in the Playgroup. Scared of the two computer geeks, you know. And then he's going, I've got to get some more weapons because I'm scared of this. It's like, who's coming to get America, you know?
Yes, and then the other thing that's like even more ridiculous is when they say like they're a threat to our freedoms or whatever. It's like they're going to come in and it's like really the government is
people first have to ask themselves how they define the word freedom. See, they just throw that word out. Oh, they're a threat to your freedom. Okay, well, what is freedom? No one ever asks themselves that, right? So what is freedom? Now, you think you're free because you can, well, what? Most people think because they can say something and they get dragged off by the secret police and thrown into a cell. Okay, on certain parts of political mandates throughout different countries, perhaps there is different cultures that have different forms of freedom. I mean, really, if most people were free, they wouldn't get up and go to work. They wouldn't pay tax. They wouldn't have to spend all their life paying off a house to a banking system. They probably feel better about themselves. They probably wouldn't be encumbered by celebrity culture and just the shallowness, which I have. I'm no elite, I'm no Zen master. I've learned this the hard way by sort of right now. I was supposed to be making transformations in my inner world many years ago. I was smarter in my mid-20s. I was on the right path, and then somehow I drifted into the world. And so this is not a judgment call, but really when they go to really, is anybody thinking that there's people in Iran or somewhere going, you know what, I want to get the Americans because they're free. Who's thinking that?
Yeah. It makes much more sense that like they're just pissed that America's been bombing them all these years, or like they're putting sanctions on them or whatever.
It's unbelievable. I mean, who's getting up every day and even thinking about I've got to? And secondly, say they're jealous of your freedoms. They want to stop your freedoms. Okay. Well, how are they going to do this?
Yeah.
I mean, like they're all going to get together and make a boat and come over and sneak in. I'm like, it just doesn't. The fact that you can trick a lot of people with this stuff that's a part of me that's always just gone, Jesus Christ. I mean, I used to do another joke, and then they call them extremists. I'm like, they haven't even got any. They're not even allowed to fight back. You've got 500-pound depleted uranium shells and F-16s and fucking jets and battleships, and they're extreme. You're going to fire nuclear missiles from space, and these people are extreme. Sorry, it's the choice of words. It's just it gives away the folly of it immediately. I don't know how anyone would fall for it. It's like, and even if they go on there and then they're showing them chopping someone's head off, which you don't even know is real or not. And they go, look, here's this guy cutting someone's head off. Well, is that any worse than dropping Exocet missiles? Excuse me? I don't understand why, apparently, if it's done out of a machine, that it's somehow civilized.
And I think it's the same thing as, like you were saying earlier, like trying to like be the heroes and the good guys and solve the problem that they created, like because we were arming these groups like in Syria and everything, like, and we created them pretty much with when we went on Iraq and everything.
Well, it's a big mixture. I mean, who even knows whether or not that there's certain factions of governments within the Middle East who are in collusion with the West as well to oppress their own people for a goal that's actually got nothing. Because if there is the idea that there's powers that be that want a singular world government, then oppressing your own people would be a part of that plan too, if you're of the elite and didn't give a fuck. So I mean, the rabbit holes are big, and I don't claim to know the intricate answers of the complexities of global geopolitics by any stretch of the imagination, because, you know, I'm just a comedian. I don't have access to their secret databases. I don't, you know, I'm not sitting here claiming I have any idea, but you really do have to think that, you know, what you're being, you don't even know if and then the worst thing is you may even be in collusion. Just say there was a Middle Eastern power that looks as though it's getting subjugated by the United States and Great Britain or something, but is actually in collusion to actually subjugate it. I mean, it's even like I used to think about this in that film Braveheart that Mel Gibson made. And then there's those paths where you realise that as much as the Scottish go, look what the English are doing to us, look what the English are doing to us, there's Scottish elite that are involved with the English. You know what I mean? They're involved with the English going, yeah, do whatever you want. We'll give you land and castles and stuff. And they go, yeah, great. Come in and slaughter them. You know? So it's a very tricky situation, everything, you know, because then you've got to be... I mean, America's it's such a shame that it likes to run ramshack over the earth at this point in time, because I always respected it. It was a very exciting country. It's got a lot of good stuff in it, and exciting stuff, and a wise indigenous people, and a stunning terrain. And I just go, oh, why can't it all just be working well? I want to go there. The people are friendly. The fucking countryside's amazing. You've got all forms of different healers and entertainment, and oh my God, it's got everything you could, you know, ask for to explore in your life. And you go, oh God, it's got these assholes running amok.
So, do you think there's ever like comedians that go the other extreme, and like maybe they just because you were talking about like political correctness, maybe there's comedians that go the other extreme and just like say things for the sake of being offensive, just like to be edgy.
They're the ones. Yes, I believe that there is. There's guys. See, from that perspective, if you're simply wanting to be, as you say, edgy to the idea of just being blatantly disgusting, then, you know, you've missed the point, really. You're like a bratty child, really, aren't you? Just hoping you can offend someone. I mean, really, what's the great point of wanting to offend anyone to begin with? There's no great personality landmark in yourself to be great. I can be offensive, you know. I've never seen the point. I mean, if you just want to be offensive for the sake of being offensive, and yeah, as I said, you're really just being a bit of a child. That doesn't break down the idea of the sort of oppression of something like political correctness. In fact, it just boosts it. it just really boosts the idea that perhaps you need it because you've got these bratty kids, you know what I mean? I mean, comedy is very dangerous. Not only, I mean, to yourself. I mean, a lot of comedians will fight about how, you know, come on, don't get offended. It's only words. It's only words. But, of course, words are very powerful. And the irony being is that not only you may be being offensive to yourself, I mean, offensive to someone in the audience, which you have no control of. Anyway, to begin with, I've never set out to offend anyone in an audience. Because that would be arrogant to begin with, to think that you know who these people are. I don't know who these people are in an audience. I don't know their past or their traumas or their joys or their morals or their... I don't treat them like that. I treat them as though they're just here seeing me, and if they choose to be offended by something, and sometimes I've even had people point out to me where I'm a bit offensive where it's actually been quite relevant. I mean, if as an artist, if you can't take criticism and realise, you know what, I really could have done that better, you're right. It's not about pandering to an audience. I think a lot of these comedians that simply want to be, they're trying to make the point that you don't pander to an audience, you know, which again, if you're trying to, I met a lot of comedians who go, I don't swear and I don't do this because I don't want to be offensive to the audience. I find that offensive because you don't know the audience.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you're being arrogant by taking a board that you know what you could take out of your act so you don't offend these people. Well, you don't even know these people. So in fact, I think they'll disrespect you more for doing that.
Yeah. And that's like how good can their comedy be if they're just trying so hard to please...
Exactly.
You know, the audience, and yeah,
it's like an artist or any musician or any artist. You can't just paint a picture to just hope that all these people like it, can you? You want to, yeah. I mean, yeah. I find that really, really strange. I mean, I understand, you know, if you want to, you know, if you go on TV and they say don't swear, well, you just don't swear. You understand that because you know it's a big audience, and the TV station just doesn't want. Oh, we don't want to deal with this. Someone's going to write in. Someone will write in. so yeah. It's very interesting, this kind of stuff with comedians. But as I was saying before, I went off the point that words. I started to realise that not only are words perhaps powerful in the sense of the way they can affect the audience, the words are powerful is the way they affect your own biochemistry. I've started to realise that the more I was getting involved in ranting at the world but not dealing with my own issues. And, of course, these things are starting to coalesce within my... Because I used to think, you know, people come and see me once, but I have to do this 150 times a year. So it starts getting embedded in me. I've got to have a break. And then I realised to do, because words and thoughts and feelings manifest in the body. So because everything's holistic, everything's connected. So, of course, it even comes back to what they say in religion. Don't go judging people. Don't go throwing these barbed words out there. Why? Because like Aboriginals, I was thinking this the other day, they always say, you know, it all comes back. Indians call it karma, and that might not come back in this lifetime, but everything can come back because it's cyclical. And I thought it very interesting that Aboriginals invented the boomerang. They know what you put out there fucking comes back. so that's why I started to realise comedy is dangerous. It's the most dangerous of art forms, and not just in the sense of dangerous to the status quo. If you're not careful, it's fucking dangerous to you. Much better when I was playing music. Music didn't bring me to this state of fucking total exhaustion and fucking... Yeah, you know. Just 2013, at the end of that, I was going to finish at the end of that, but I just hit the wall before it had finished. And this whole year has been fucking just impossible for me, just in a sense of, I won't even go into it, but it's been fucking full on. Not in a good way, but in a good way of fucking waking me up. And as I said, and the irony being I had a show in Edinburgh years ago called Wake Up. I really should have kept that poster and looked at it myself every fucking day. Instead of telling everybody else to wake up. And as I said, I was getting these omens. And trust these omens. We've got it. I really do. I'm thinking now, we do have to go introspective. We do have to go in. We have to go in. Someone else pointed out a great thing the other day. If you don't, because our psychic powers and with secular science, things like this are getting cut off. The divide and rule strategy. Here's your body. It's all in parts, all this, and it starts to dislocate the mind and starts to take you away from what you think is mumbo-jumbo by a bunch of indigenous people. But no, I always knew that somehow one day we'd be going back to these people going, fuck me, they were right. I knew they were right. Because they tell you don't wreck the earth. And you know what? It's interesting. And you can't just wreck the earth, because if you wreck the earth, you're wrecking your own body, because you're connected to the earth. And I don't just mean connected because you stand on it. I mean, you're of the earth. So as I brought my body to a state of total collapse through exhaustion and bad diet and doing drugs and not taking rests and not looking at the internal worlds that I needed to look at, I have fucking my body, my universe, which is a universe, has fucking collapsed. It fucking collapsed and said, right, you've got to go and fucking heal it. Now it's got to be healed. So when we do that to the earth, it will eventually just, well, it's like if you could have a breakdown as an individual, then your spiritual holistic connection to the earth, if you break the earth down enough, then you'll have a collective breakdown. You'll have and any kind of breakdown is a fucking wake-up call. And eventually the earth will probably go, well, these fuckers, I've been giving them omens. And they're not waking up, so I'll just fucking split the United States in half, and I'll make Asia fall into the sea, and I'll make 50,000 fucking foot tidal waves, and I'll see if these fucking idiots will wake up. Because, as much as we've got all these weapons and so forth, it ain't going to do shit if the earth decides to just reorganize itself.
Yeah.
Who else on earth could pick up, 100,000 cars in one big body of water and dump it somewhere else? Well, the earth can. So yeah, I was thinking about my next show being called Nervous Breakthrough, actually.
What can you say about the business, the comedy business, and what it's like for different comedians trying to make it, and I guess the community within it or lack thereof?
Well, I've never been one of these guys who is particularly involved in getting to know who I'm supposed to know. I think there's a couple of reasons for that. One, I come from the underground world where I figure that if you're good, that you're good. There was a bit of foolishness in that philosophy when I moved into a more mainstream paradigm, because really there is a sense of who do you know? Do you know the right players? Do you know the right people that can get you stuff? Which on a level is not that unintelligent to be informed about. If I go deeper introspectively, I think maybe there's a path of me that I haven't confronted in myself, and maybe I just don't. I think there's a level of self-sabotage within my unexamined psyche. So part of that, I start to examine even my own philosophies, and are they coming from a place of groundedness and intelligence, or are they actually just being manifested to the subconscious through my own unexamined weaknesses? Depending on what you want to do in a stand-up comedy career, if you wish to be involved in comedy, so you become a TV presenter or something, then I'm sure it's more viable to simply go, right, let's find out who I need to do or who I need to meet, and then get involved in the corporate side of it itself. I mean, I've never been an artist on that level. I do know there's a part of my own, just my own sort of feeling about art, which I've always liked. I've always liked art that's just real. I think that stems from heavy metal, because heavy metal it's especially when thrash metal started, that was even broke away from normal metal, and it was just ugly and it was brutal, and it was like, we don't fucking care who likes this or not. And so I do, and then as I got older, I realised that there's other artists like that as well. Even if you got all good ones, usually, you know, Pink Floyd and Peter Gabriel and Kate Bush, and, you know, they're artists that make what they want to make, don't they? You know, I used to say there's no difference between Kate Bush and Slayer. They both make what they want to make. They go, this is what we want to do, and we're doing it. And so I started to realise that there's no separation in artists like that, you know. Tori Amos, people like that, it's the same kind of stuff. And so, you know, I mean, you're obviously a bit of a metal fan yourself. You understand. You're not part of the mainstream. As I said, you know, that's a super mainstream. They're the ones that. That's why if you do want to become, you don't want to get built up simply by the press and by the industry and go straight into mainstream world, because you really then don't have fans. You have people who are seeing you because
you're the next big thing, or it's cool to like it or whatever, I guess.
They've been told to see you, and they think it's cool. And the only being is the mainstream don't even really know what's cool. That's why once you vanish, they vanish with you, because, you know, they never thought you were that cool because they don't even know what it is. That's the world I'd like to speak to. They're I prefer to speak to, really, because, you know, what's the point of me speaking to a bunch of people that go, right on, Steve, right on. I'd rather speak to a bunch of people that go, geez, I've never thought about it like that. But yeah, because, you know, if the mainstream is the majority, then we need them on board. Yeah, can't just call them a bunch of fucking losers anymore. We need them on board. So it's
so like what's the highest level of success you hope to have with your comedy? Would you say you're happy with where you are now, or is there like, or would you want to? Is there like another place you'd like to get to with it?
Well, first of all, because of what's happened to me in this last year, and my entire worldview has crumbled, and my physical health crumbled, and my relationship crumbled, and my certain ideas about myself crumbled into a fucking abyss. At the moment, because I was, I have to do inner work. So the idea of getting to another level, because I won't get to another level through that structure anyway. That corporate structure for me to get to another level can only be used as a tool once I'm back and more grounded in someone that's actually healthier, more relevant, and doesn't really care. So I simply have to, if I'm going to fucking preach, which I never wanted to do, preach. I wouldn't say I want to preach, but if I'm ever going to say anything, then, you know, I've got to walk the talk more. I'll gladly admit that now. I wasn't doing enough. I wasn't doing enough inner work. I was actually entrenched in the fucking matrix as well. For all my apparent non-conformities, my foibles have been exposed. And here I am exposing them again to the general public. That's the strange thing about comedians. I don't know whether I should keep some of this secret or not. I need to go and see some shamans and get some wise strategies upon personal enlightenment and spiritual healing. I think we should. I'm very interested to see these shamans. I'm really thinking that's a path to get into. That's a real path to get into. Because, you know, Western medicine cures symptoms, and I just don't want to cure. And I've been self-anesthetizing myself for fucking decades now.
So it's kind of like a spiritual inner thing, whatever you're going through, but not like an.
I could have made it on a conscious level, but I didn't. I was. I waited till I fucking fell through the fucking floor, and which will certainly, you know, if you don't use that as a wake-up call, then you're a fucking idiot. So it gives you this, my internal world crumbled like the staircases in Lord of the Rings when Gandalf's in the mines of Moria. That big demon, fire demon, coming up from the bowels of hell, chasing me. And then he turns and goes, "Run! Your swords are no use here." Yeah, fucking oath they're not. That's what the world's going to be like once the Earth decides to fuck around. Yeah, your nuclear weapons are no good here. Run! I've been blessed in Australia, even though it's a global laboratory for a new world order corporate police state and the destruction of the middle class for an isolated community for the rich. But apart from that, it's got a massive desert, which I've got a feeling that I should perhaps. I've always wondered, why was I born here? I don't want to be born here. I used to want to go to. I wanted to be American when I was a kid, and then I wanted to be in Europe, and then I wanted to be. Why was I fucking here? There's no one here. There's nothing to do. And now I'm back here, the biggest epiphany of my life, going, well, maybe some past life reason. So I'm starting to think maybe I have to go into the desert. Because I just think it would be fucking good for some reason. Anyone want to come? If anyone's listening and they feel like going on a spiritual quest, I'll put the word out there. If there's anyone's interested in getting on a plane and coming to Australia in the next few months, and we'll get a Jeep and we'll get enough knowledge and supplies so we don't starve as dumb white men, but we'll also just simply go out there with the idea of intention, and then the universe will fall into place for everything and everyone we need to meet. So if anyone's interested, you can contact me through Sean and let me know. And I'm gladly come.
So, any final thoughts or things you'd like to say? Maybe like any advice for any other aspiring comedians or whatever?
Well, my advice is simple for comedy, like any art. Do it. Just start. Just do it. If you think if you think that's what you want to do. In fact, anyone, for not even comedy or art, anyone that wants to do anything out there, do it. It's our job now in the universe to break away from the matrix and simply have your dreams manifest, but not through reading New Age and going to see Anthony Robbins, but having them manifest through which I've done. Don't get me wrong, but we've got to do it. We've got to stop. There's simple ways to start to bring down systems, like McDonald's and stuff. Just stop. It's easy to get rid of corporate stuff at one level. You just stop. Just don't go. Like a flower needs water. They need cash. And if there's no one in there, then there's no one in there. And then it's just gone. And it's the easiest way to have a revolution, because we can't have a revolution because we'll all have to get together and have a meeting, and then we won't get on. So, and then, we'll be viewed as a terrorist group to begin with, and we can't have a revolution, a violent revolution, because we're not allowed to even have glow sticks anymore without being called terrorists. So all we can do is start bringing down corporate structures, and here's the positive thing, McDonald's and all this stuff's not good for you. Not good for you. So all you're doing is actually not taking something that's not good for you, and don't heed my word as the health guru of the universe, because I was snorting coke and smoking weed and eating out of service stations in Great Britain. So I'm not preaching. I'm just telling you. Burgers aren't good for you. So if you just stop the McDonald's and no one goes, then it just collapses. And then the ruling elite will understand, or the corporate elite will understand that there's a synchronized worldview, or we're starting to have an ideology among the mass where we all get on. So they'll come looking for the leaders of our group, but we haven't got them. Because we haven't got together. We're just all at home doing nothing against the law. So it's perfect. They'll go, where's the leader? We go, we don't know. We haven't even met. So I'm just making a salad sandwich from wheat-free, gluten-free, yeast-free bread. So and see you later. Yeah, I want to be an artist. It's our role. It's the next spiritual evolution into art. We have to be artists. quit our jobs. I know it seems frightening. No, I wouldn't know how to do it either because we need money. It's a shame we need money. They go, we need more money. Now, you know what we need? We need an earth where we don't need money. That's what we need. We don't need more money because they won't let us have it for some reason. So we need an earth where we don't need it. That would be easy. Just get up and go for a swim. That's what we all really want to do, isn't it? Get up.
Yeah.
What am I getting for a swim?
That's like that one guy in charge of the Venus project. I forget his name. He's talking about like a world without money.
Yeah, right.
I forget his name. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's it. That's what I thought. See, I've been coming up with all these good ideas myself, and yet, battering myself into the ground. So now is the time of self-evolution. We all need self-evolution as well. When your time is, that's not for me to say, but my time's here, folks. And I'm just telling you, there's an easier way to do it than having a fucking burnout. You don't want a burnout, believe me. I used to think that when athletes talked about burnouts that they just sort of got tired. I didn't know that they fucking burnt out. And yeah. And it's not pleasant. Go and find an athlete and ask. And thanks, man. It's good. I haven't done much stuff in the States, any performances or many sort of interviews or anything. So you're one of the first. So this is cool, man.
Oh yeah, thanks for coming on. I think this went pretty well. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was great. So, it's cool.
Yeah.
Stay in touch.
So yeah, man. And all right, that does it for this episode of BSing with Sean K. I should be BSing with more people soon, so stay tuned.
Yeah, right.